G'day, meet Bruce and Cody and Rush. Today they're off to body condition score their hinds because condition score has a big impact on reproductive success for the year. A body condition score is an on-the-spot method for assessing the health status of adult hinds. A thick coat can disguise the actual body condition. The only way you can do proper condition scoring is by hands-on palpation. For hinds in moderately good condition, or better, condition score is a reflection of the amount of subcutaneous fat. For hinds of poor condition that carry very little fat, it reflects a loss of muscle mass. This is best shown on the BCS scale. Don't forget, on average, a change in body condition score of 0.5 units equals a 5 kg live weight change. A real challenge for farmers is to improve body condition score over lactation and prior to mating, especially if post-rut weaning. Hind condition is often compromised during lactation as hinds strive to provide milk while feed quality is lower, affecting your annual reproductive success. Hinds with a condition score of less than 2.5 are at a serious risk of failing to get pregnant as they fail to ovulate. If the herd average falls below 2.5, there is a high risk of depressed pregnancy rates. If the herd average falls below 2, there is a high risk of catastrophic reproductive failure. The higher the average body condition score around mating time, the earlier hinds will conceive. For every 0.5 increase in condition score, there will be a 3 to 5 day advancement of the date of conception. But what if they are too skinny? It's often easier to prevent hinds losing condition over lactation than it is to rescue them once the condition is gone. However, sometimes hinds will fall below the average. That's why monitoring and intervention are crucial. Strategic feeding, summer crops in drought-prone areas, and grain are all great ways of keeping your hind's body condition up over lactation and prior to mating. Pre-rut weaning is almost essential if feed quality isn't available to get hinds back in condition prior to mating. Wean calves early, draft the lowest score hinds into separate groups for special feeding, and establish all hinds on an improved feeding regime to get an immediate recovery of condition. Hinds have an amazing ability to rapidly gain 0.5 to 1.0 condition score over 14 days before mating, once weaned. In summary, remember the impact of body condition score on mating success? Target average hind condition of at least 3.0 to 3.5 when hinds are put to the stag. Hinds can rapidly gain weight once weaned and provided with high quality feed. Strategic feeding for hinds at 2.5 or lower will improve overall pregnancy rates and even advance conception dates by up to 10 days. So there you have it. G'day, meet Bruce and Cody and Rush. Today they're off to body condition score their hinds because condition score has a big impact on reproductive success for the year.
Weaning can be a stressful time for deer, and it can be stressful for farmers too. While every farm is different, careful planning will reduce stress, ensure animal welfare and reduce losses. Consider using supplements while fawns are still with mum and after weaning. This boosts hind condition before mating, gives fawns extra nutrition, and provides familiar food post-weaning, helping to calm them down. It's recommended to carry out stressful procedures before weaning. Tagging and drenching can be done a couple of weeks before, so fawns will be familiar with the yards and be less stressed on the day of separation. Avoid weaning in bad weather. Be prepared to delay if bad weather threatens. Cold and wet conditions will increase fawn stress and make them more susceptible to infection and disease. Set up nearby weaning paddocks. They should have good pasture covers, good shelter and water, and be away from disturbances like dogs or busy roads. Consider using the 8-kin weaning method, which settles weaners quickly. Graze hinds and fawns in the weaning paddock for 2 to 3 days before weaning. On the day, weaning should be just separation of fawns from hinds and weighing fawns. Take the opportunity to body condition score hinds while they are in the shed and adjust the feed to ensure 3+ condition score at mating. Take hinds to a paddock out of sight and sound of the weaners. The fawns are then returned to the same paddock after weaning. After a minimum of 2 days, the fawns can be moved to fresh pasture by just opening a gate and letting them move through in their own time. Your weaners should be given the best quality feed available to maximise their growth potential prior to winter. Target at least 300 grams per day growth through the autumn. In summary, weaning can be stress-free. Supplements before and after weaning boost performance and make weaning easier. Doing fewer procedures at weaning reduces stress. Returning fawns to a familiar paddock and familiar feed reduces stress and improves growth rates. Phew, that was easy. Let's go watch the cricket.
What a fantastic video there from the P2P on body condition scoring hinds, and fantastic way to kick off what is the last session in a 3-part series in the, of course, new virtual conference this year for the 2020 Deer Industry Conference, held across the web right now on YouTube, Facebook, and of course the Deer Industry website. I'm your host today, Sarah Perriam, and I'm delighted to be your MC across these interactive live stream sessions, which have been very well received, as well as, of course, our production team here at Perriam Media being able to handle the broadcast across the past 3 Tuesdays. Now, each session's going to run for about an hour to 90 minutes. Today, we're going to try and wrap it up within an hour. However, I do know what is coming towards the end of today's session is always one of the most popular, so we'll see how that Q&A goes. Of course, if you've missed any of the past presentations from the past 2 weeks, they are up on YouTube if you search Deer Industry New Zealand, and also on podcasts. So search Deer Industry New Zealand on wherever you listen to your podcasts from either this year and even last year's conference sessions that you can listen back to. And remember, share them with your team. It's a great resource to be able to share out the great work that's going on in Deer Industry New Zealand and the wider P2P groups, as well as, of course, the great guest speakers that have been a part of the conference. As we said, this is an interactive conference, and of course it's all about taking your questions to our guests. We do have short amounts of time with them today, so preferably if you can check out what is coming up in the program and put your questions in early, that would be appreciated. I will have both the Facebook Live as well as the YouTube live chat open here on my laptop, and I'll do my absolute best to get those questions to you. On YouTube, have a look on the bottom right hand corner, you'll see the chat feature. For many of you watching already are very familiar with that. As we do normally, to check out that you are watching, we want to know where you're watching today. Put in your farm location, your closest town, and we'd love to be able to celebrate who is watching in this 3rd session of the 2020 Deer Industry New Zealand Interactive Conference. Now, so as we've just said, let's test them out, and of course on Facebook, pretty straightforward in the comments below. Now, of course, we would love each of these presentations that have been pre-recorded. They're about 10 minutes long. And, of course, we will have some larger Q&As towards the end. So what's coming up in this last session? Around 1:30, Nick Taylor, Deer Industry New Zealand's Venison Marketing Manager, will be giving a presentation and an update on our venison markets and the work venison marketers are doing with our customers in these turbulent times. Now, following that, we're going to be joined by venison marketing managers from Alliance, Duncan Venison, First Light Foods, Mountain River Venison, and Silver Fern Farms. They're all going to be online to answer answer questions from you, our viewers, and on marketing activity and prospects into the future. But to kick off, we have a pre-recorded presentation from Lindsay Fung, DIN's Environmental Stewardship Manager, on demonstrating environmental stewardship, which is fast becoming the norm for pastoral farming here in New Zealand. Find out what the industry is doing to ensure that deer farming remains a viable and sustainable land use here in New Zealand. Now, we're going to hear from a farmer and consultant on the power of deer industry environment groups as well, a project supported by the Passion to Profit program. They, of course, are Emma Buchanan and Gretchen King. Lindsay is then going to join us with Phil McKenzie, the Farm Performance Manager for Deer Industry, to then take your questions live after we're joined by Emma and Gretchen. And, of course, excuse me. So therefore, we're going to take a short break from our wonderful sponsors here on Part 3 of the Deer Industry Conference before we go to Lindsay's presentation.
Dinner doesn't start with the twist of a knob that releases the gas that ignites the hob, nor does it start in the depths of a book from the depths of a mind of a passionate cook. It starts way back in the soil and land at the mercy of the elements in a farmer's hand. And there lies the question that needs to be raised. This dinner of yours, was it loved? Was it praised? If the answer is yes, then you'll probably see it started right here, and oh, what a meal it will be.
Hello and welcome to today's session of the 2020 conference. In this presentation, I'm going to cover the policy work DINS has been undertaking in environmental stewardship. I'll quickly go over the industry's position on environmental stewardship and then provide an update of our policy activities. At the regional level, we have some good gains in regional plans for water quality, although some concerns remain in some regions. However, we are facing some challenges with government policies over the next few years. Last year at conference, we presented our view of where the industry stood on environmental stewardship and emphasised that the industry and farmers individually have a long history of stewardship. I've just inverted the diagram that I presented last year to show you our environmental plan and the things that we do. Late last year, the DINS board formally approved our New Zealand Deer Farming Environmental Plan that outlines our commitment and actions for environmental stewardship. The first commitment is doing the right thing, which by and large falls upon the farmer with support from DINS, DFA and other organisations. The second and third commitments that I've highlighted are very much DINS-led activities. And you can see how these all align with the three of the four industry strategic goals down at the bottom. I've shown this table at DFA branch chairs meetings for the last 3 or 4 years and at last year's conference. The main part to focus on is the last column on the right. Overall, we should be reasonably comfortable with where most of the councils are at for farming under water quality regulations. Of the regions where there are concerns, these are mostly because the regional plans are under Environment Court appeal, so final decisions or operative plans are yet to be implemented. One region, Canterbury, does remain a concern. Canterbury's numerous plan changes for sub-regions are quite challenging. Overall, however, we've done okay. In the last 5 years, we've provided written submissions and spoken at hearings in a number of regional councils, where our main concerns are stock exclusion from waterways and winter grazing, and in some regions, grandparenting of nitrogen pollution is also an issue. This time last year, our CEO gave us a pass mark for environmental policy. We probably haven't moved much further than that, but we have scored some good gains in some regions. So I've mentioned about Canterbury. I think that still remains a concern for us. But I think from my perspective, we do have some challenges coming up for Otago, and this will require a lot of farmer input and DFA involvement. Apart from Otago, we do have ongoing concern for Southland, as it has yet to go through a nutrient limiting setting process for its rivers, and we know that there will be some significant changes to farming. However, we have established a very good working relationship with the Council, which we hope will help in the Council acknowledging that we really are doing the right thing for the region. And we're doing similar relationship building activity with other councils. Turning now to central government, I have to say that this is an area of significant concern that will occupy all of the livestock industry's time for the next 5 years. So we have freshwater management driven by deteriorating water quality. We submitted on that last year, and there will probably be an imminent announcement soon. We've got Indigenous biodiversity driven by declining habitat and key species. And we've got greenhouse gas emissions where the policy is driven by international agreements. While the industry supports the objectives of all of these policies, the Chair, in recent comments regarding freshwater regulations, had some comments which also equally apply to the others. And that is that the deer industry has been a pioneer in good environmental practice, and our objectives are quite clear: to help the deer industry play its part along with all New Zealanders, while making sure that regulations achieve their desired purpose without imposing unnecessary costs or compliance hassles on farmers. So where are we at with freshwater management? As I said, this is likely to be decided before the election, so we expect some announcements on that quite soon. I think it's fair to say that we have had some good outcomes from our submission to this process. Grandparenting of nitrogen and other pollutants, which was on the table, is now no longer there. And mostly there is no stock exclusion requirement over 10 degrees slope. So for our home country farmers, that's exceedingly helpful. But we do have some issues that remain unresolved, and that's stock exclusion in flat areas such as the West Coast and South Island high country, in particular where these are low impact or low intensive land use. Stock exclusion of some wetlands with the same conditions around low impact use. And quite worryingly, a resource consent is likely to be required for winter grazing on land over 10 degrees, which captures many, many farmers who practice winter grazing. As I mentioned before, Indigenous biodiversity, we expect this to be decided after the election. It's not a high priority for the government. But when we do get to address the submissions that have been made on here, we do have some concerns regarding the establishment of significant natural areas on private land, and furthermore limiting activities on land adjacent to those SNAs. Lastly, greenhouse gas emissions will be our biggest challenge over the next 5 years. This is because we know that farmers will be facing charges for emissions from livestock, and the default position as part of legislation is that farmers will enter the ETS in 2025. As a result, the industry organisations have formed a partnership with the government and iwi to develop an on-farm reporting of emissions, mitigations and offsets, carbon sequestration, and their subsequent pricing with a view to reducing these emissions over time. You'll recall that the second commitment in our deer farming environmental plan is that people recognise that we are doing the right thing. We have set up 2 ongoing activities to engage with regulators, and feedback has been very positive to date from both the farmers and the council and central government officials that attend. We will continue and extend these activities where we can. As mentioned, we are also developing relationships with other regional councils and considering how we better engage with the New Zealand public in this COVID-19 world. But now, more than ever, we think that our story of food production in environmentally low impact farming systems needs to be told. And it's not just DINs. The DFA branches, P2P advanced parties and environment groups can all play a part in reaching out to regulators and the public. Shortly, you'll hear from one of our deer industry environment group facilitators and one of our deer farmers. From all the feedback that we get, first, second or third hand, we are confident that this approach is serving us well. We do have a good story to tell. Our farmers should be proud of what they've done, and it's up to all of us to get that message across. Thank you.
Now, before we get into our next two guests who are doing a bit of a live Q&A with me, I also want to point out that after that we will be going to Phil McKenzie and Lindsay Fung for questions on both Lindsay's presentation you just saw, as well as, of course, what you will hear from Emma and Gretchen. A farmer and a consultant who've both been involved in deer industry environment groups. These are groups of 5 to 8 farmers working together to complete their own farm environment plans. This is another one of the projects in the Passion to Profit program. Emma Buchanan is a managing director of SOTA Rural Compliance, and she's based in Hawke's Bay. She's been facilitating 5 of these environment groups. Now, Gretchen King farms at Porongaho in Hawke's Bay with her husband Leighton and is a member of one of these groups as well. So I'm joined now by the two ladies sitting side by side there in the bay. I suppose I'll go to you first, Emma. Why did these groups start and what was the purpose?
I guess we can say there was probably someone in the deer industry who had a lot of foresight. It provided a really non-threatening and low risk chance for people to get involved in this sort of environmental stuff. So yeah, it was basically a great idea from someone at DINS.
And Gretchen, what kind of things did you do in the group?
The great thing about the group was it's all about sort of group learning. So we visited, I think we had 5 farmers in our group, and we had a session at each farm and at each session, as well as talking about their challenges and their opportunities. We also, Emma was very good at each one having like a theme or a learning. So like at one we learned about options about carbon, I think, on one of them, and others we learned about critical source areas. And so for us out at Porongaho, we're not in a plan change area, so for a lot of it was all new to us. So it was getting a bit of an understanding about what was coming our way.
And Emma, with your role, it would have been fantastic that the farmers could have their environmental plans drafted effectively under your watch, and could you even sign them off?
Yeah, that was one of the real advantages, and a lot of them took advantage of getting a discounted nutrient budget, which is something they may not have done otherwise. So it gave them an idea of their nitrogen leaching and their carbon position before they really had to have it. So that gives them a much longer lead time to be able to come up with mitigations and things. And drafting the plan themselves, it increased the ownership compared to a plan that perhaps you'd get a consultant to do for you and then shove in a bottom drawer. There was a lot more ownership in the plans that they created themselves.
Emma, what sort of expertise did you bring to the table, not just yourself, into these groups to support the farmers?
It was a bit of a mixed bag. So different groups, it's a bit random as to who joins which group, but we're incredibly lucky with Gretchen's group that we had an absolute expert on biodiversity. And so he joined the group, and he happened to identify on one of the farm visits that the farm had a particularly significant natural area. And then him working with that farmer were able to go and get protection for that area. So, he brought pest management and all sorts of expertise.
And Gretchen, what did you find from the expertise there that you valued the most support-wise?
It was a really good way to get into it, because we kind of put it on the back burner because we didn't need to do it, and we're in a low impact farming environment anyway. I think the biggest thing was for us, it just opened our eyes to you don't know what you don't know, and so for us it just created a whole lot of discussions and things that we'd never considered before, like for example, the way we'd fenced one paddock off recently. Emma pointed out if we'd actually fenced the fence down the middle of it, we'd fenced the flat off from the hills, it would have made a difference. And we, just things like that, which at the moment we don't need to do, but we will in the future. So that was one of the biggest things. And I think just the learnings that came out from it. What as always happens, once you learn something new, it brings about more questions. And actually what ended up happening as a result is we ended up creating a catchment group in our area, so that a whole community could be working together. And that was something that wasn't on our radar whatsoever. And yeah, that's where we ended up. So it was pretty cool.
And Emma, once you start to form these group of farmers, there is so much value to continue with that group into the future. What's your intentions?
Definitely. So we're going to be able to cover the biodiversity changes and the essential changes. So farmers will be able to keep up to date with what's happening and moving in the world.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us as Emma Buchanan and Gretchen King, a part of the P2P. I was struggling to hear Emma a little bit. What she was saying is that there's other things such as essential freshwater, Indigenous biodiversity, and of course zero carbon that they can all collectively learn and value together by working in a group. So fantastic. Now we're going to be joined by Phil McKenzie and Lindsay Fung from the DIN's office in Wellington. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hi. Afternoon.
Thank you so much for your presentation there, Lindsay. Now, of course, this is a call out to everybody who is watching for any questions for Lindsay and Phil on the P2P program, and of course, Lindsay's presentation earlier and anything that you heard there from Emma and Gretchen. I've just wanted to give a shout out to some of the places that people are watching before we going. We've got some of the Victoria O'Sullivan is watching from Leiston, and Annette Scott there in mid-Canterbury. Of course, over on YouTube, Catherine Morrow is watching from Hamilton. So great to see a great turnout as well. I've got a couple of questions here for the gentlemen. It's before I can get to anybody sending any through on the YouTube chat as well as the Facebook comments. Now, Lindsay, why should farmers bother getting involved in the P2P program when my farm isn't the problem?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, that's something which we would have heard a lot of about 5 years ago, and maybe even three years ago or a couple of years ago. I think the reality is that we have these central government policies coming heading our way around fresh water and then soon in biodiversity. Whether we like it or not, we will be caught up in the greenhouse gas emissions reductions efforts in 5 years' time. So without sort of wanting to sound too gloomy, these things will affect pretty much all farmers to varying degrees. And so I guess, it would be nice to think that if you've done a whole lot of groundwork through these environment groups and through the likes of Emma and others, a lot of that anxiety might be dissipated, but also once those things become required through legislation, I think farmers should be in a much better position if they've already made a start.
Now, Phil, with your farm performance hat on, there must be a few farmers that are frustrated. They just want to get on and farm deer more profitably. Is there an end to this, or is this just now part of farming?
I think it's probably becoming part of farming, and I think realistically it probably always has been. We just haven't formalised it in a plan, but it's not that farmers are suddenly starting to do things. They've been doing a lot. And should be really proud of what they're doing. But there's things that other farmers can learn. They can learn from each other. And you heard Gretchen and Emma there talking about, building understanding in a non-threatening way, and how there was, a farmer in the group who was an expert on a particular topic. Generally, that's how farmers learn, is by standing around looking at those things. So it is going to be part of the way we do business, and increasingly part of running a profitable deer farm.
Lindsay, I have an audience question from Grant Dixon from the Waikato on how well do the writers of legislation understand farm systems and profit?
The short answer is I don't think they do understand that at all. The more sort of constructive answer would be, because they're starting from a very low knowledge base or experience base, it's really up to the likes of us and farmer groups to make the offer to them to come and have a look at a deer farm, come and talk to the farmers, identify what are concerns that they as planners and writers of these things have, and then listen to the farmers to see how they assess those risks and manage them on their farms. And I think when we've done that, we've found that we've got some real cut through with people. So I take the point though that the proposals are quite often not grounded in practicalities.
Now, Lindsay, what happens if people aren't close by to an advanced party or environment group, say, for instance, where Gretchen was in Hawke's Bay, and what other sort of resources and support can DINS do for deer farmers to do the right thing?
Well, I think I'd probably better throw that over to
sorry, Phil. My apologies. I had Phil in my head, and you...
I think if they called up, the first thing I'd do is say, hang on a sec, I'll just put you through to Phil.
Brilliant.
So look, we're busy gathering as many people as we can together. We have been experimenting a little bit, particularly during the lockdown period, about how we could build some of this awareness online. And I think there's opportunities to do some of that, particularly when you can connect leading farmers from other regions to farmers. Nothing will beat standing around in a paddock looking at something though. So it'll be a mix of both, but we're doing everything we can to connect any farmer that's interested with some help. And we've got consultants like Emma dotted around the country. So we've got the ability to get to most regions and help any farmer that needs it.
Personally, I think it's an absolutely awesome idea. As we know, most deer farmers are also sheep and beef farmers, and it's sounding like an awesome opportunity to sit down and get that farmer environmental plan done, regardless, with support from your fellow farming peers. So well done, Deer Industry New Zealand. An excellent outcome, I believe, from that. Thank you so much to Phil and Lindsay for joining us there live. Now, up next on Deer Industry New Zealand's Conference 2020, where the focus is on you. Of course, across 3-part series over the last couple of Tuesdays and today. It's been an absolute pleasure to join you. Now, we're going to welcome, after the sponsors break, to the live stream, Nick Taylor, who is going to give us a venison market update before we then kick in to the live Q&A with our meat venison marketers.
Rabobank, New Zealand's only specialist food and agribank. A bank working together with farmers for farmers. Our commitment to our rural clients and their communities runs deep. More than a century ago, farmers in the Netherlands made sure they were treated fairly when it came to getting the finance they needed to grow food. They knew they were stronger and had more clout if they got together. That idea has endured with Rabobank across the decades and across the world. It's how we get things done. Combining our extensive global knowledge and strong local networks with our highly regarded Rabo research, we're in this for the long haul. Food and agri is in our DNA. Today, New Zealanders save with Rabobank, and their savings stay in New Zealand to support Kiwi farmers and food producers. These savings are supporting strong, successful, sustainable rural businesses, and they're helping New Zealand. Savers and borrowers, town and country, all coming together. Together is how we can make a difference. We're more productive together. Together we can grow an abundance of healthy food while protecting our world. Together we'll come up with new and better ways to grow food using the latest technology that's environmentally friendly. And together we'll work with our clients to produce great food sustainably and reduce food waste. Together is how we face the future and overcome its challenges.
Great. So I wanted to kick off today by giving you a quick update on a few of our key markets. So as you're no doubt aware, the US continues to see significant disruption due to COVID-19, which has resulted in some states reintroducing lockdown measures. This photo here is a perfect example of the social distancing rules not being followed at a restaurant. So with some states seeing behaviour like this, it is unsurprising that they are seeing increases in COVID cases. Unfortunately, food service provides a prime opportunity for the virus to spread. A recent study by the bank JP Morgan analysed 30 million credit card transactions and showed a correlation between increasing COVID cases and the number of transactions that occurred at restaurants. Looking at Europe, Europe is beginning to see a decline in COVID cases, but they're still seeing around 15,000 new cases a day. Again, restaurants are open, but with social distancing rules being adhered to, as this photo from Italy last week shows. The challenge for Europe will be that with so many new cases and the holiday season starting, there is a potential for the virus to reassert itself. Reece spoke last week about China, which is now back to normal, or the new normal. This photo was taken last week in Wuhan and shows diners returning back to restaurants. The challenge COVID has created for our industry is that New Zealand venison has been positioned as a premium food service product. And with the closure of the restrictions on the food service sector, this means a key channel is not operating as it normally would. But this is going to be a short-term thing. Restaurants are in the business of bringing people together and creating unique experiences for them. It's not something that we can replicate at home. In a recent US survey that was conducted at the beginning of June, 40% of respondents said that visiting a restaurant was the first thing they were looking forward to doing post-lockdown restrictions. So, with food service under pressure at the moment, the venison marketing companies have been looking at new retail and manufacturing opportunities, and we've been working to support their change in target market. One of the key ways that DINS supports companies is through the Joint Promotion Fund. This supports companies and their import partners to undertake marketing activities. This year, DINS has increased the funding available to nearly $500,000. This has resulted in several new initiatives from companies, including the exploration of new online and direct-to-consumer channels in New Zealand and Australia, retail promotional activities in Europe and New Zealand, as well as expanded digital promotional activities in the US and Europe. Two examples of projects that have received funding are the Alliance Instagram competition, which they have recently been running in North America, and Mountain River's continued cooperation with a Swedish Instagrammer. Look out for the October issue of Deer Industry News. We will be having a feature that will highlight some of the other programs that have benefited from this funding. Now, obviously our chefs were not able to get out and about during lockdown either. So we set Shannon Campbell and Graham Brown to work developing new resources. With the increase in online promotional activities, companies are always on the lookout for new content. So we wanted to have a suite of new material ready for when food service opens up, along with some more consumer-friendly recipes. Shannon is focused on creating a lot of short Instagram hands and pans style videos, while Graham has done more instructional recipe-based videos, which focused on family-friendly recipes. We're just in the final stages of editing these before they get sent out to the companies. Shannon has also been creating a few new recipes for us, focusing on cuisine styles that are becoming more and more popular in Europe, such as Japanese street food, Middle Eastern food, along with more mince-based recipes as we see more mince on grocery store shelves. I also had the wonderful Nikki Aswood, who was profiled in Deer Industry News recently, create some new images for companies to use on their social media channels. We're also very lucky that in recent weeks, Shannon has been able to go out and work with individual restaurants. The program we have been running has seen key restaurants identified in conjunction with importers. We have then approached the restaurants, and Shannon has spent a day with the chef, creating a number of venison dishes that work with their menu and their style of cuisine. Shannon takes his photography equipment and captures these fantastic images, which, along with the recipes, are then shared with the restaurant and the importers and their wholesalers for them to use on their social media channels. This exercise has really reinforced to me that chefs love our product. All of the chefs that were approached were excited to take up the opportunity to work with Shannon. If they weren't fans of the products before, they certainly were afterwards, after seeing how they can use New Zealand venison in different ways to how they use European game. Something this photo, which is one of my favourites, really demonstrates, with the chef creating a venison pate and cured venison, things that you definitely wouldn't be doing with European game. So looking to the game season, in addition to Din's regular work supporting importers with sales calls and chef workshops, we are currently developing some promotional activities that will be targeted towards consumers. With experts predicting that social distancing measures will probably still be in place in Europe by October, there will continue to be more of a focus on home cooking. So it is important to be undertaking some work targeted at this market. Looking to the US, our big focus there has really been looking at the opportunities that exist for New Zealand venison in the meal kit space. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the numbers, but this is a sector that has seen huge increases in customers over the last few months. And this growth is only predicted to continue over the next few years. Part of this is driven by consumers that normally wouldn't have tried a meal delivery under normal circumstances, doing so during lockdown and finding actually it was very convenient and of a really high quality. We're focused on identifying opportunities where New Zealand venison can add a point of uniqueness that will be valued by a company and their customers. Now, this isn't a short-term fix, but is more looking at the medium term to help us continue to diversify our markets. Now, lastly, I want to talk about some of the exciting stuff happening up in China. You might have read that we've been undertaking some research, and I wanted to play part of an interview with a chef that we did as part of the research.
我今天做了一个卤菜，可能就比较适合，因为卤菜本来就有鹿肉，然后还有京菜也可能也比较适合。满汉全席里面，因为正好有鹿肉这一系列，它是本来就属于京菜嘛，是红烧鹿肉，其实是鹿肉烩土豆吧，应该这么说，它有点卤菜的成分，结合了上海本帮菜。首先我们会用到茴香啊、八角啊、香叶啊、干辣椒啊这些常用的一些香料。 然后鹿肉本身它本来就自带的那些香味。
So one of the key things this research project was trying to ascertain is for Chinese consumers, which of the Chinese cooking styles is most suited for venison. Nearly all of the chefs we talked with highlighted both Lu and Sichuan cuisine as being the most suitable. The challenge we have here is for us to show them how to adapt the traditional recipes with venison and to leave enough room for the unique flavour of venison to shine through. The other thing that this research reconfirmed is that Chinese chefs really don't know how to cook venison and often try and treat it as they do beef or lamb. So there is still a big educational piece for us to work on. So we have a lot of work happening up in China, and I'm really keen for us to keep the foot on the accelerator with this stuff. We're in the midst of developing an appropriate logo, website, and the educational material I spoke about, which will include some specific things for Chinese social media platforms. We have a workshop planned with New Zealand Trade and Enterprise that will be held in Shanghai in the next few months, and this will focus on high-end and innovative chefs. We're also looking to further explore venison's application in the Sichuan cuisine, as we've identified it being potentially a great market. The other project that we are looking at is whether there are any Chinese perceived health benefits for venison. Now, it's not in the same traditional Chinese medicine space as velvet, but we're sort of thinking it might be traditional Chinese medicine adjacent. So we just want to explore what that means and see if this opens up any potential markets for us.
Traditionally at the Deer Industry Conference, this particular section is always after lunch, and I can see why, because every year the videos get better and better about what's going on marketing some of the most beautiful meat in the world. And I just remembered then that I've forgotten to have lunch. Absolutely stunning. Thank you so much, Nick Taylor, for that presentation. Now, of course, it's time to go to our marketers. We are joined on the line live to take yours and my questions live. Please don't be shy. They want to hear from you, and this is always a very active part of the Deer Industry Conference every year. In the YouTube below, put your comments in the chat. I can see it here open. If you're watching on Facebook, put it in the comments as well. We've got plenty of time through to 2 o'clock, so we've got a lot to cover, and feel free to ask any questions. If you could please put who you'd like me to refer that question to, that would help as well. I do have a series of questions here that we can kick off and get that underway. So Joel, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just do a wee bit of a whip round to quickly introduce who we have on the line. Now, kicking off, Glenn McClellan is the China Market Account Manager for Silver Fern Farms. Of course, John Sadler is familiar to you all as Manager of Mountain River Venison. Tony Frost is the GM for Venison Sales and Supply for First Light Foods. Terry O'Connell is the Marketing Manager for Alliance Group. And Jared Sandry is the Marketing and Logistics Manager for Duncan New Zealand Venison. So we'll have a question wrapped around to each of them first to kick it off, and then of course I'd like, whilst you get your questions in as well. This question first is for Glenn. Now Glenn, have you seen significant changes in New Zealand's retail venison sales during lockdown and post-lockdown?
Yeah, we've been working hard to extend sort of the range that we sell into, and the New Zealand retail has been a key part of that. The retail sector has been challenging for venison due to the lack of knowledge around how products are cooked. But I believe prior to lockdown, we've successfully marketed our branded retail packs in New Zealand. And that's been so successful that we're actually expanding that to launch into the US. But we saw a good trend over lockdown was a move to home cooking, given that people aren't able to go out and about. So to follow on from that, we're actually running some promotions over the next little while into the main season, and we'll use that to encourage some more of that consumer demand and look forward to this home cooking trend continuing to develop.
John, the challenges in Europe have been very real. Can you give us an example of how your partners have identified those new opportunities within their domestic markets and developing new products to fit into that particular European market?
Yeah, the challenges certainly keep coming, and we're faced with trying to move more product into retail because food service is so seriously disrupted, and I think we all see that continuing through this season. The challenge with retail is that mostly that's chilled product, and so it's much easier to sell a chilled product in retail. Having said that, chilled is becoming more challenging because the transit times to Europe for the sea freight vessels is longer, and the cost of air freight's gone up. So we've worked with our partner in Europe to develop some chilled retail products, marinating frozen product and thawing it and selling it as retail. And they develop a few products with chili type rubs, herbs, and at the moment for the summer they're offering those as grilling items to go on the barbecue. And those sort of innovations are going to be the way that we'll be able to sell more at retail and solve, in part at least, the problem of the logistical problem of getting chilled product over to Europe.
Tony, the interruptions in the US have been considerable, and First Light have got a sales manager based on the ground there in the States. How is that role going significantly post-COVID and the importance of having somebody on the ground?
Through COVID-19, we saw extreme benefit in our investment in the North American retail market, and certainly having those resources, now a team of 5 up there, is the answer to sort of maintaining and through COVID seeing increased actual growth in that retail space. Our challenge remains that venison, remains a very small quantity in retail, and as both Glenn and John have alluded to, retail is just not an easy challenge or solution for venison overnight. It is a strategic, planned, mapped out, strategy that we've got to work on to actually get the consumers used to eating venison in retail and accepting of it in that form. We've got sufficient confidence that that's going to continue, and we're really keen to invest in that channel, especially in the US, and with the support that we've got up there. And I think, for us, how and why will we do that? Similar to our other experiences in other markets, where venison was not well known, we're going to build the awareness with the lower value convenience products and really get consumers on board with that, and then focus on lifting that spend as we that increases and that awareness grows. So that process with our staff and with the new resources up there is well underway, as the others would support too. Silver Fern with their range, it doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of planning and work that must go on for products to be accepted into retail and to get them onto that shelf. So that's well underway, and we're looking at launching those within the next 6 months.
Terry, what challenges has pivoting to more consumer focus created for Alliance and for your partners?
Well, firstly, thanks for the opportunity to say a few words. This topic is rather broad, so I've made a few notes to ensure I don't go off piece and still remain within the 2-minute time slot. The main challenge is truly understanding the motivation and needs of the modern day, multi-aged protein consumer in various cultures. We're determined to understand that core group better, but it remains a work in progress, which requires considerable research and effort to really understand and derive insight. Now, this approach also takes an increased level of resource and infrastructure to meet a heightened level of demand for delivering a high quality product and service. Specifically relevant is the traceability and supply chain story. As consumers are becoming more cognizant of where products are coming from and the backstory, this will be magnified in a post-COVID marketplace. What assistance do we need from our suppliers? Transacting further up the value chain requires an increased level of forecasting and planning to align supply with market demand, importantly, committing to longer-term supply arrangements with a volume underpinning the partnership to provide consistency and continuity of supply. Just an example of some of the projects we have underway, we've got action in various markets, but one of the most promising is the work we're doing in the UK with a group of chefs and their requirement for a high quality protein option, which is coupled with convenience. The solution is developing and enhancing the sous vide range to meet this need. It's taking time for this customer to fully understand the protein and the proposition, but we're fully focused on the task at hand and making solid progress. Just to finish, I'd like to say Alliance Group remains fully committed to the venison category, and we continue to work on increasing value for this magnificent protein. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Jared, with challenges in your existing markets, what has Duncan been doing to identify new markets and opportunities?
It's been very challenging. Coronavirus has been a worldwide pandemic, so it has affected all markets, just not one or two. So with that, there's been limited chance to sort of identify new markets. So with that, we've just focused on the New Zealand market. We looked at how people adapted their shopping habits and trends, and a lot of that was purchasing food online. So with that, we've partnered up with a couple of companies like Container Door and Grab One to reach out to the New Zealand consumers. And it also helped that a lot of people are looking out, supporting local produce and companies. So that made them actively look out for New Zealand sourced proteins, which has been great over the COVID lockdown.
Fantastic. I've got a couple of questions coming in here from some viewers, as well as a few more of my own. Bill Robinson would like to know, I suppose just put your hand up if you could. Did any of these companies use couriers during lockdown and have trouble with the deliveries not arriving in fit state? This is, of course, with e-commerce, and that's why a lot of people weren't game to use it. Can someone take that question?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Yep.
Yeah, we had a lot of our products sent out on couriers, especially through Container Door and Grab One. And we were lucky enough that they sort of advised flexible shipping dates. So it wasn't to be delivered on a certain time. However, there was still half a dozen or a dozen cartons that did get lost in the couriers, which was just replaced directly and as soon as possible. So there was some hiccups, but from our side, we didn't actually weren't affected that bad.
How did you find it, Tony?
Sorry, we had a bit of experience in America, and I think generally it went very, very well. As you can imagine, couriers were in hot demand, and so their workloads had, gone from, quadruple, 10 times over with the volume, and so generally very much similar to Jared with the experience. Yes, a couple went missing, but basically, they were honoured and new ones sent pretty much straight away.
Glenn, let's talk China. China's been rapidly becoming a very important market with a huge reliance that we have on its trade. What markets and areas is Silfern Farms currently exploring?
We still continue our developments with China. So venison had been shown huge promise in China prior to the COVID-19 until deer meat somehow found itself on the banned list. So MPI has done some fantastic work in getting that resolved, although we're still seeing some barriers to entry into that market. But as we overcome those, we see some huge opportunities within China, within the food service and processing sector. And we've even seen some good success moving into the pet food segment in the China market. And outside of that, as I mentioned previously, we've expanded our retail range into the US. So venison's a part of a range that we've launched there, and we're working with existing US retail partners currently purchasing lamb and beef to leverage that relationship on other species and further develop venison into those categories. So one of those good examples is that we're in the process of creating our own e-commerce platform in the US, and so that's going to showcase a full range of products, including venison, and expect that to be operational later on this year.
Of course, many viewers are farmers and probably have one burning question, and it's of course what the spring schedule is going to look like. I would probably want to fire this first over to John. Can you comment on where it's at and the flow down to the farm gate?
Lucky me, eh? Oh, crikey, there's so much going on out in the market. Food service is certainly disrupted, and that's a big deal for the deer industry. I think that's already been covered, and that will unfortunately impact on the prospects for the chilled season. We also have this drama around air freight, the cost of air freight. It's more than double. And shipping by sea freight, it's every year it seems to get earlier and earlier that the last vessel leaves to Europe. So we need to find other options to that, which is why I mentioned before about using frozen product to sell and retail and a little bit chilled. Food service, for us, US markets are a big one. And, it's not good news there, and almost every day it's a little bit worse. So this year's going to be tough.
Terry, Alliance, you just said, is very committed to the venison category. How are you feeling about prices to the farmers in spring?
Yeah, look, it's a very good question, isn't it? And one that everybody wants an answer to. Look, this COVID thing's really put this in a tailspin, and I'm usually a generally optimistic person. There's still some good chatter out there, but some of these key importers are hesitant to engage because they're worried about a second wave of this COVID coming through and affecting food service again. So they've got the option of waiting and then going for the air freight, but as John mentioned, that's going to be prohibitive with the cost. So yeah, it's a really difficult position we're in at the moment, but we're still confident there'll be a quite good demand for venison in the game season. But I think they'll like this just-in-time ordering. So yes, the sea freight might be limited, but they'll be trying to delay and see if we can get a better result with air freight.
Tony, I have a viewer question here I'm going to put to you. Grant Dixon would like to know, do you see venison in the functional food space? Food is a fashion item with health properties. What are we doing in our messaging around that space?
Absolutely. I think, especially on the healthy side of it, venison to me has huge potential in this space. I think COVID sort of tends to disrupt things a bit. And so, you know, our whole focus now is going to different platforms of being able to promote and grow those sales again. And, you know, if we look at venison, it's not a cheap protein and we don't want it to be. And this is where it does. It starts to play and lend itself on those emotive factors that those consumers are looking for and to satisfy, and one of those being health. So I absolutely feel that this is a space that needs a lot of work going into. You know, DINS in the last 12 months have put out some amazing promotional brochures and material for us. And certainly I've been sharing that with a lot of my customers for their end customers. And, you know, it's valuable stuff. But of course, it's then having the right platform to sell those on. So, of course, food service is going to be a struggle. You know, let's make no bones about it. In the next 12, 2 years, 3 years has even been mooted, you know, that maybe it's going to take that long for food service really to sort of get some traction again. But it's not going to stop people wanting to eat and wanting high value quality protein for a special occasion for, you know, as we've talked about already today, you know, eating at home or cooking yourself or, you know, being able to buy it and enjoy on a different platform. So, yeah, absolutely.
I have a question that I'm going to whip around as a way of closing, coming from Mark Harris. And the question is, I would like from you your number one learning from this pandemic and paired with mine in the importance of diversification and assessing new markets' potential. I'll kick off with you, Glenn.
Yeah, very good question there after a period of uncertainty. But I think one of the biggest learnings is that we need to have a diverse range of sector options. So while also that market diversification is important, within each market, there's a whole range of sectors that we can access, and the more we can learn about sales investigation into consumer behaviour and different channels, the better we're going to be able to diversify our sales within those existing markets that are already familiar with our fantastic venison story. So that's where we'll continue our focus.
John?
I'd say flexibility is probably something we've learned. We need to be flexible, change our products, change our markets, change how we ship the products to our markets. You know, the guys at the factory are challenged because some of them didn't have work after it, some of them had to do more work, and just a whole lot of things around being flexible.
Terry?
Yeah, look, I just echo John's comments there. You know, you've got to be light on your feet and be quite agile, because this is a major event. You know, we've never seen anything in my certainly time in the meat industry of this nature. So yeah, it's taught us a few things, and I guess agility is probably the main one.
Jared, how have you found it as well?
Yeah, I agree with everyone else. It's you know, it's been very hard looking for new markets and diversification, especially when you can't travel and meet new people and talk to them. So I guess just being flexible, and I guess you've just got to trust your customers well, finding new ways of working with them in existing environments. So not only do we have to learn new ways of working, but so do our customers. So it's just being supportive for them and making sure that they're on the other side of this pandemic as well.
And to you finally, Tony.
I think relationships and think outside the square. You know, here's a huge opportunity for us to power on forward and actually find a new pathway for venison in the future, and there is one.
And I'd like to finally have a wrap from Nick Taylor himself, hearing from the marketing panel there. Nick, what have you taken away from this very unprecedented time in marketing venison and what you've heard there from the panel?
I think, as everyone has identified through the questions today, it's been a challenging situation in a whole range of markets, and I guess it's an unprecedented event. I think what it really underscores for me is the importance of some of the market diversification work that DINS has been undertaking recently, and I think that's through programs like P2P. And so as we are planning our activities into the future, it's thinking about how can we be supporting companies to undertake some of that market exploration and work in new markets, which is challenging and takes time and energy and that. So, but I think, as everyone's talked about, there's huge opportunity. Everyone sees that huge opportunity. We've got a fantastic story about the product and the provenance of the product and our fantastic farmers who are supplying that. And so I think, look, we're well placed to keep moving that story and taking that out to the world.
Yes, it will be a very interesting time to hear where it looks in 12 months at the next, the 2021 Deer Industry Conference. I want to thank all of our panellists just then and from the venison marketers around the country, all of our guest presentations over the last 3 sessions, and of course the live Q&A from you, our viewers at home. Thank you so much for taking the time to participate in the Deer Industry's very first virtual conference sessions. Very great. I honestly believe they are one of the pioneers in terms of communication, like they were pioneers way back in the 1970s. Now, of course, all of these presentations are available on demand individually via podcast, as well as on the Deer Industry YouTube channel. Make sure you share them with your networks and your team so that we can all learn on this journey together. Hopefully, it will be in the 2021 Bill Richardson Museum in Invercargill, back having a beer with each other and a catch up on what has been, of course, a very, very crazy time. It's been an absolute pleasure being your MC for the last 3 sessions, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. And I'm about to go and find myself some venison for lunch. I'm looking forward to it. And to close on that, I just want another viewer, Catherine Moore, has said, it was great to see venison offered as a gourmet meal kit dinner option in HelloFresh home delivery and at the promotional kiosk at the mall. I think it's been a really important time for our farmers to also see the wonderful marketing domestically here at home as well. Thank you again so much for taking the time to stay with us here on these live sessions. Any feedback, please send them through to either myself or to DINS, and we look forward to doing this all again next year. Any feedback on the live streaming, much appreciated on what we can do to improve it for you. But otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you again soon.
A couple of years ago, we purchased a tough 3,000 acre hill block adjacent to our 4,000 acres of flats. This block has added the perfect balance to our venison program and Peel Forest Estate. At Peel Forest Estate, all our deer have electronic ear tags. We use Gallagher equipment to record every facet of the work that happens here, whether it's animal health, weights, grouping, pedigree analysis, comments and drafting. We have a very accurate data collection system which we then analyse on either the Gallagher APS software or ServIQ. Back in the day when we didn't have the access to Gallagher software and hardware, it was all manual data entry and yelling tag numbers out in the deer shed with dirty ear tags, everything. It was a nightmare and took forever. We've got 8,000 deer here. They're all EID'd now. They're all DNA'd, so we have full pedigrees on every animal here on the farm. And we do a lot of recording of certain traits and weights, and so the amount of data that we're gathering here is is huge. And without Gallagher, it used to be a huge job. Now it's made it very easy. You know, I make draft lists on the HR5, and I can now process 600 hinds an hour through the octagon, drafting 8 different ways, which is invaluable at mating time. I'm sending the hinds out the door as fast as the boys can keep them up to me. In the past, it was a massive job. We continue to grow with the software. We're using it more and more and creating more traits and more life data fields, and just the level of information that we have on our animals now is massive. You know, we're running 4 deer sheds. We've got 2 TSIs, 2 HR5s, so we can be gathering data all over the show here now. You know, the other thing I really like about Gallagher is their backup support. We've always there might be some teething problems, or I don't know how to do something, so they're just a phone call away. They jump on TeamViewer, and so they're on my computer basically, showing me how to do it, and they always have a solution to my problems. It's very simple to load from APS Office. All the analysing we do there we do a lot of analysing within APS, but we also download sessions and analyse further on Excel and our stud program too, and that's all very seamless and easy. So all in all, we couldn't live without it now.
Really pleased we got into this. Thanks for your help, Dave.
It's a good idea, honey. You reckon it'll come out? Cover it and tell computer to leave it 10 minutes, you'll be fine. Good call, Dave.
Good call on getting those security cameras, Dave.
You call a new one yet?
Yeah, kind of.
When you've got decisions to make, we'll be there to help you make the right call.
I'd go for those ones, Bob. Yeah, good call.
Did you choose these?
Oh, you know. For great advice and insurance, talk to FMG.